Hi guys, this is the first lesson of the C++ programming of our lessons. My name is Mehmet İşcan, and so the application lessons or the example sessions is run with me on this true spring course. Okay, and so in the first place we should progress with the editor or the integrated development environment for the C++ programming. I extensively use the Open with Code or the Visual Studio Code editor in order to program any C++ or the C programming language. Okay, just like this one. And so in order to create any projects or any file to be compiled in the C++ programming language, and so in this lesson we will use it through the whole semesters. Okay, and so in order to download or to install this Visual Studio Code editing evaluation, you can use these links: code.visualstudio.com downloads. Okay, and so if you are using the Windows or the Mac or the Linux system, operating system, you can choose one of them. And so if I'm using the Windows code, and so this getting started automatically download of the VS Code user setups. Okay, I'm canceling it because I have already installed this Visual Studio Code, and so in order to get more knowledge about this, how to install the Visual Studio Code, you can easily check this site. Okay, and so firstly, in this lesson I'm gonna show you how to create any file to be compiled or to be run on this Visual Studio Code. Okay, and so in order to do that, if you're installed every part of this Visual Studio Code in here, and then you can add the new file on this project lesson. Okay, for example, I named this program as a main.c file in here. Okay, and so we can create a new terminal in here. Terminal is used like the CMD or command window in the Windows process. Okay, and so you can run or you can write any code in here like this one, the clear, and so every code to be run on this page. Okay, and so if I run or if I compile this code, and so if I write any code in here, either in C or C++ programming language, and so I can run or I can debug this code by using this terminal section, which is the PowerShell. And so if you are using or if you need to learn about anything of the PowerShell, you can use the internet or the Google service. Okay, and so in the first place, for example, at the last semester you can use this syntax in the C programming language, and so we need to main function body in here with the return value of the 0. Okay, and so for example printf, and so hello world can be given at this moment. Okay, and so if I run or if I compile this program, and so I can use the Control plus F5 button on my keyboards. Okay, if I use this syntax, and so the Visual Studio Code asks you what C++ compilers in here. And so if you are using the C++ programming language, and so you need to install as well as this compiler session. I'm gonna use the GDB LLDB compiler in here, or G++ compiler in this session. Okay, and so if I select this form in order to compile the C main function, and so gcc.exe is used to compile these codes. Okay, and so if I click this one, and so the terminal creates a compiling session in here. And so the debug console is showing us our main settings on this compilation session. But in the terminal screen, you can use or you can see easily these codes. And so this code is irrelevant for this lesson, because this is the standard automatic procedure to be used in the compiler settings. Okay, and so you do not need to write these whole codes, because the compiler creates us automatically when I start or when I using the Control plus F5 button in here, or the debugging session. Okay, and so if I check or if I evaluate of this function codes, the main.c in here, but you can see that hello world is given by this form of expression. Okay, and so maybe you cannot use or you cannot see easily this code session and this one. I can easily set the another font size by using the Visual Studio Code session, by using the Control plus Shift P session. And so you can use the preference open settings or JSON file in here, and then the editor font size can be reset by changing these values. Okay, for example, I can use the 20 in here, and so the code is bigger than the previous one. Okay, and so the terminal.integrated.font size can easily be changed by using what, like this one. And so hello world is given in here. Okay, and then what? But this whole syntax is related to what is related to the C programming language. Okay, but our subject or our objective of this lesson is to learn about the C++ programming. Okay, but in order to understand the underlying mechanism of this Visual Studio Code, or how to run on this Windows or the Linux system, and so we should check the launch.json and task.json function in here. Normally, if you are using the Visual Studio, and then this whole process are automatically built by creating this function without setting any change or any promotion on these codes. But if you are using the Visual Studio Code, and so you can set the task function and the launch.json function in here. Okay, we should change these variables. And so what about the launch.json file? Launch.json file is only related to the debugging session. And what is the debugging session? If you are using any compiler in C or C programming language, C++ programming language, you may have to examine the whole code while it's running. Okay, and so this configuration enable us or gives a way to step-by-step examination on this programming. Okay, and so if I'm using this syntax or these configurations files in the debugging session, and so I can run this code step by step, and so I can check or I can catch the error or the problematic session on our codes. Okay, and so in order to get more knowledge or the many knowledge about this debugging session, you should check the VS Code debugging session or launch.json session on the internet. Okay, and so the detailed information is given at there. Okay, and so the launch file is only related to the debugging session. And so what about the task file? The task file is only related to the compilation or the compiled session of this programming language. Okay, And so in the task, the type of the task or the command, like this one, this is the R compiler session or the executable file in order to create a C programming language into the what? Into the machine language, okay? And so if I give this path to my code, and so this executable file is run when I start to what? The Control F5 button. And so the arguments of this session is that the what? The objective file or -g file or the executable file of what? Of our programs, okay? Like this one, main.exe, okay? And so you need to learn about these two things because the VS Code is getting much higher promotion to be used in the C or C++ programming language, because the language in the world is collected to one editor page, like the Visual Studio Code, okay? And so Visual Studio Code is not the integrated development environment or the IDE, but you can set or you can install any extension or any libraries by using this extension session easily, okay? And so if I'm using the Visual Studio Code, and then I can easily set or easily download and install by using the extension session in here, okay? This is why I'm using the Visual Studio Code, as you should use this VS Code or its extensions, okay? And so these are the main integrated development environments or the editors in here, but in this lesson we will talk about the main differences between the C and C++ programming language, okay? These are the main example of the C programming language. First thing first, how can I create a C++ file to be compiled in our computers, okay? Firstly, we need to change the extension of this main.file in here, like this one. If I'm using the C programming language, and so I should use the .c extension in here, but in C++ programming language we should give this extension as .tup or .cpp in here. This is the main code of the C++ programming language. And so how can I test this cpp file in here? If I'm right and then if I press the Control F5 button in here, and so the hello world is also run at this code, okay? And so if I'm right, I can add the IOStream library or input-output stream library, which is only included in C++ programming language, not in C, okay? And so I can give that cpp has only these properties, but C not, okay? And so if I run this program again, and then what? The terminal has what? Gives a error values or the completion error in here. And so what's the wrong of this code? This code states us to what? We should change some properties of our codes in here, like this VS Code file in here, okay? because this VS Code is directly related to the completion of the C programming language. But if we need to use the C++, and so we should delete it in here like this one. And so if I press the Ctrl F5 button in here, and then what? C++ GDB. And so in the Visual Studio Code there are two options in here, cpp.exe or G++, or in another terms the C++ compiler in here. At the previous case we should use the GCC or C programming language compiler. But if we need to compile both the C or C++ programming language, and so we should choose this file. And then what? And so the launch JSON file and task file is reinitialized or is recreated by using this diagram. But the output is not changed because the C++ has the whole properties of the C programming language. Okay, and so we can easily say that for the comment, and CPP or C++ has the whole properties of the C programming language, or in another terms the C++ is an extension of the C programming language. Okay, but C does not have the whole properties of C++ programming language. Okay, and so what is changed in this code? The only change the task file, because this command is directly related to the g++.exe or the compiler of the C++, and the launch is also changed with this term gdb.exe. Okay, and so gdb.exe is a debugging session because the launch file is only related to the debugging session. Okay, the name g++.exe. Okay, this is the first example session of our codes. And so if you are using the whole main cpp dot or the C++ file or C file, you should reorganize of your code to or to according to CPP, either CPP or the C programming language. Okay, these are the main term of this lesson, and so this is the first example of our codes. Okay, example 1. And so this is example 1, and so we need to comment the whole states because to getting the example session 2. Okay. And so what's our main concern of this lesson? The concern of to get an answer about what is the difference between the C and C++ programming language. Okay, and so there are 5 main difference or different version of this C and C++ programming language. And so firstly, C is procedural programming. Okay, but C++ has both the procedural and object-oriented programming. And what does it mean? The procedural programming is that, like this one, int main, printf, or any code is run on this page and so goes down to what? To complete every sentence on this programming language techniques or the syntax. But in C++ programming, we can use this procedural with a linking the another object of these things. For example, in C programming language, int main dot blah blah blah printf blah blah blah. Okay, and so in the C programming language, we should always use these codes like this one. Goes down, we should write every code in here, and then these procedures is implemented on the on the compiler. But in C++ programming language, we can create this structure without no extensions. But in C++ programming language, we can also create any variable like this one, integer a, or any variable like this one, or the car a, b in here. What does it mean? This is the standard type of the standard type of variable in C or C++. But in C++ programming language, this is the specific type of variable, which is defined by the users. Okay, and so this car is also linking to linking to any other variables, okay, or functions. As a result, in the C programming language, every functions, every variables are distinct part of this code. But in C++ programming language, any function, any variable, any class, or any type which is defined by the users can be linked to the other variables. Okay? This is giving us to the object-oriented programming techniques. Okay? And so, I hope I can tell the procedural and the object-oriented programming features by using this analogy. Okay? And so, the other terms at the 2. C does not support the OOP, or in specific detail we cannot use the polymorphism. Polymorphism is difficult for our writing, and so the encapsulation and inheritance. These terms may not be easily understood in C++ programming language, but in time you will get used to it. For the polymorphism or encapsulation and inheritance, these paradigms or these terms is not included in the C programming language, because the polymorphism or encapsulation or the inheritance mechanism gives the C++ as a feature of the object-oriented programming, because the polymorphism, encapsulation, and inheritance directly related to the linking to any variables or functions to another one. Okay, and so if you have a car class or car variable type like the integer, and so car has a function, has a variable, has any type of the structure like in C. But if you have a car with the variables or functions, and so this is supported by the what? The polymorphism or encapsulation or inheritance. Okay. And so in C++ programmings, these whole terms supported by what? Supported by these terms. Okay. And so these terms are closed for you for the meaning of the usage of these things, but in time you will learn it. Okay. And so do not hesitate in order to understand this polymorphism or encapsulation or inheritance, but in time you should learn about how to use it in the C++ programming language, because these terms are the most important terms in C++ or any object-oriented programming language. Okay. And so in specific details, or if you are digging for the specific detail of the encapsulation in here, in C programming language does not support the encapsulation, so or therefore the data behave as a free entity and it cannot be hidden from the users. Okay. For example, does not support encapsulation, but C++ does support encapsulation. These silly things, but in example I can show you these things. For example, if you have any function in here like this one, int main, and so integer a, integer b, blah blah blah. Okay. In C programming language you can always reach these values a and b in everywhere. Okay. But in C++ programming language if you have a class or something like that, you don't need to learn it or know it in here. Just for an example, we can create a specific section for this encapsulation mechanism. If we define any variable integer a in here, and so this class hides this variable from the user or from the coder. Okay. And so this is the definition of the encapsulation. Okay. C++ supports this feature, but the C does not. Okay. And so the other term of this difference between the C and C++ programming language, C is the function driven language, but C++ is the object driven language. What does it mean? For example, if you are using the int main function in here like this one, return 0 value, and so in your code, or we can use the same structure in the example session like this one, include for the standard input output session, or int main function in here with the return value of the 0. And so what? If we have two variables, int a and int b is in here, and so we can create a function like this one, summation function or mysum. Okay. And so a and b is the parameter of these things, and then what? We can create the integer c as a result of this function, and then what? The sum of these two variables, what? %d new line characters, and so c may be add in here. But in order to run this program, I should write the summation function with the name of the what, with the name of the my sum, and the parameter of the int a and int b, or num2 and num1. Okay. But as also we need to add the property of the return value or return type of this function with the type of the what, the integer values. Okay. And then what? We can return the num1 plus num2 in here. Okay. And then what? If I run this program, and so the terminal gives us the sum of these two variables is equal to the what, is equal to the 5. Okay. And so 7 is also add or reassigned to a variable in here, and if I run again this program, and so the result of this program is equal to the what, is equal to the 10. This is the definition of the what, the definition of the function driven language. Okay. Function driven language. In C programming language, every code should include this kind of definitions in order to what? In order to do some task. But in C++ programming language, this is the first example for the what? The function driven language. But in C++ programming language, we can also use the standard C libraries in here, because the C++ is the extension of the what? The C programming language. Okay. But you don't know this syntax in here, class A or class car in here, which is the what? The property of the C++ programming language. And so we can create the two variable in here, but the my sum function can also be added in here, int num2. Okay. This may be strange for you, but it's not, because in time you will learn about how to create a class structure or the this kind of definitions. Okay. And then what? We can use the return num1 plus num2 in here. In C++ programming language, we can create the car class with the what? The my car in here, or we can change the math or my math class. Okay. And so my math or my process in here, we can create this kind of definitions in here. And so what about the object-driven language? Object-driven language is that we can use these function blocks int C is equal to the what? My process, that in order to reach the function of this my sum in here with the terms of the what? 4 and 5 in here. And so we can as well use the printf function in here, the sum of these two variables like this one can also be run in these codes. And so the sum of these two variables is equal to what? 9. Okay. And so 3 and 7 can also be given in here. Any arbitrary number can be used in here, but the sum of these two variables is equal to the 10. And what? This is the object-driven language structure. Every variable in C++ programming language may have the what? The function definition like this one. Okay. But in C programming language, we should create or we should write our own function body as a distinct part of the what? Part of the variables. Okay. But in C++ programming language, we can create a variable in here, and so this variable may have another variable, or may have the function, may have the another structure in this language. Okay, this is called the object-driven language in the C++ programming language. Okay, and then what this is the for, and finally we have the other feature is the in the difference of the what between the C and C programming language. In C programming language does not support what the function and operator overloading, and also namespace. These are the distinct term or the unknown terms for you, but in time you will learn about these terms. But in C++ programming language, this function and operator overloading in one class or one variable, you can use it. Okay, and so this syntax is also same, but with the difference of what, the absence of the not. Okay. And so what does it mean? Operator overloading is the very important point of this language. For example, include the stdio.h in here, int main, return what 0. And so there are two main function in here, my sum1 with the parameter of int a and int b, and so printf sum of two function is what, %d, new line, and so a plus b. Okay. But in the another term, my sum1 with the parameter of the what, a, is equal to the what, this term. And so if I run this program, and then there is no error or compiler error, but these functions, my sum1 and my sum2, has the same name. And so in C programming language, this is the syntax error. Okay, because in C programming language there is no overloading mechanism. Okay, and in order to show these things, I can change this main cpp file into the what, the C completion. And so if I run with the gcc executable file, and so the problems is that conflicting types for my sum1, or in another way, or in another terms, the compiler tells us there are, or there shouldn't be, two functions with the same name in here. But in C++ programming language, we can overload the functions with the usage of the what, the overloading mechanism, like this one. Okay. And so there is no syntax error in here in C, but not in CPP. Okay, the overloading is in here. There's another definition of the operator overloading, but it's directly related to the class definition, and so we will escape it, or we will move forward to the next session, because you don't know anything about the class definition, but this mechanism is imitated in the definition of the class or object-oriented programming. Okay, and so the another term in the C++ programming language, we can create a namespace like this one. Okay, if I run this program and there is no error. Namespace is another scope of the C++ programming language, but it's not included in the feature of the C programming language, and so you will benefit its features in the C++ programming, but we should not describe the whole feature of this namespace in here. Okay, and so for example, or as a summary, we have 5 difference in between the C and C++ programming language: the operator overloading, and the function-driven and object-driven language structure, and so encapsulation feature, and so the polymorphism, or the general terms. In the general terms, object-oriented programming is supported by the C++, and the main difference for the syntax rules, the procedural programming is included in C, but the C++ is extension of the what, having the both procedural and the object-oriented programming features. Okay, this is our first lesson in here, and so in the next lesson we will solve some main functions related to C++ programming language for the summary of the C programming language. Okay, because in order to have the full picture of the C++ programming language, you should try harder. Okay, but in the beginning we tried the simple examples in the C++, and so the move forward to then the complex notations or topics in the C++ programming. Okay.